Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this Standing Committee on Strategies and Public Policies on October the 15th, 2018. So, tonight we will be receiving the application and request from different agencies in preparation for the budget estimates study for the fiscal 2019. Without any further delay, we have the delegation of the regional police authority. They are arriving in great force, and there's several of them. So the superintendent says that he needed support to come here. I think he can take care of himself. Without any further delay, who wants to start the presentation? As you know, for those
comfortable in French, we do have translation devices at the back of the room to help you. Alors si y a des gens qui comprennent.
If someone doesn't understand the other language, I would interest you to go and get a receiver for simultaneous interpretation that you can get in the back of the room. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome. I appreciate your comments, and we have several parts in our presentation. For the first part of the presentation, it will be given by the members of our board.
The opportunity. My name is Nagesh Chamala. I'm the treasurer for CRPA. Total budget for 2019 we are presenting is $30,128,000. It's an increase of 0.9% over 2018. This is made up of increase of $1.8 million. That's resulting from pay and allowance plus 5 new members of $778,000 and an additional 5 members offset by civilization of the force of $537,000, $150,000 for operations and maintenance, and indirect costs of $303,000 for a total increase of $1.8 million for 6.07%. However, there is a surplus coming from 2017 of $1,589,000 for a net increase in budget of $267,000, which is 0.9% increase over 2018. That's it for my presentation.
Question de la part des membres du
Any questions from the councillors?
No?
No? Let's go on.
My name is Ross McKay. I'm the secretary of the CRPA. Staffing changes that are being considered for 2019 fall into 3 categories. Firstly, we'll be reclassifying and moving 5 regular members who currently do administrative duties to the front lines. Secondly, we'll be hiring municipal employees to replace those reclassified regular members. And thirdly, we would like to add 5 new regular members. You can see the totals there that we will then have of 144 regular members, 79 municipal employees, an increase of 1 in the commissionaires to 14 for a total staff of 237. The civilianization portion of our staffing action is a process that's been followed several times by Kodiak over the years in an effort to get police officers out of administrative positions and onto the street where they can do the work that police officers do. The normal process, as shown on this slide, starts for civilianization. You would use the Lean Six Sigma processes to look at the officers that you have to see if there's any opportunities to civilianize that position. If those duties would allow a civilian person to do those jobs, that's a candidate for civilianization. Once you've identified those positions, you hire municipal employees to fill those spots. Then you have two options below that. You can eliminate those regular member positions, do away with them altogether, and you would end up with a reduced complement of police officers. The other option is to reclassify those regular member positions and thereby maintain the same complement of police officers. With that option, there's no financial savings. With the other option of eliminating regular members, you've reduced your complement of police officers, but there's some financial savings involved. The other option is to complement your staff to increase it beyond this as well. The 5 positions that we've identified, that have been identified through this process this year, come at a cost of $873,000. Because we'll reclassify the positions to a lower rank, the rank of constable, we will realize a savings of $124,000 on the reclassification alone. We will replace the 5 regular member positions with 3.5 municipal positions, which would save an additional $568,000 if we were to eliminate the 5 regular member positions. However, we have decided to reallocate rather than eliminate the 5 regular member positions so that we elevate the service level. This means that we have allocated the projected savings of $692,000 from this civilianization effort towards the $749,000 cost at our 90% rate of the reallocation of the 5 regular members to the front line for a difference of $57,000. So the addition of 5 new regular members and the 5 reallocated civilianized members allows 1 extra member per frontline shift, which will greatly improve the service level of the Kodiak region. Rationale for adding 5 new regular members and reallocation of 5 current regular members. The Moncton CMA has one of the lowest rates among Canadian cities of 100,000 or more of policing cost per capita. We also have one of the lowest rates among Canadian cities of 100,000 population or more of police officer and staff per capita. And the crime severity index in the Greater Moncton CMA is one of the highest amongst CMAs in Canada. It's actually, we're in the top 10 of the highest rates of crime severity indexes. And that's a figure that comes from Stats Canada. It's not a figure that we have generated. Nextly, the key performance indicators. We have a committee, the Quality of Policing Committee, and we've worked with Kodiak RCMP over the last couple of years to develop key performance indicators, actual measures where we can compare the results of any initiative that's taken on in the city, in the district, and measure it against similar locations elsewhere, and basically see how we're doing. A recently implemented key performance indicator shows that 25% of the frontline shifts fail to meet the minimum staffing levels and must be supplemented by overtime. And call for service. Service calls have grown from 26,059 in 2015 to 31,811 in 2017. That's a 22% hike. The results for the first half of 2018 already show a 10.5% increase over the same period last year. And lastly, population growth. The industry norm for projecting staffing needs for police agencies is to mirror the growth in population. Greater Moncton's population growth has been 1.5% as calculated and used in the 2014 MHPM report, which has proven accurate. That's the extent of my presentation.
Okay. Question de la part des membres du Conseil?
Any questions from the councillors?
Monsieur Alain.
Merci, monsieur.
Thank you, Worship.
I just want to make sure that the public knows too that the CRP board brought forward some recommendations, maybe to alleviate the number of or change the number of new officers this year, and you've enumerated definitely a lot of points to which the reason why we're moving forward 5 and not 3, for example, as suggested at one of our executive meetings. So, and I think there's one point that's maybe we have to discuss even more. It's cannabis. The arrival of cannabis this week, I think, is going to be a pressure on our force. I think it's something we're in the unknown. It's not maybe a difference than alcohol, but at the end of the day, it's still going to be the social contract. I'm seeing it at work. The social contract with alcohol has been done for the last 50 years. Unfortunately, cannabis is going to be new. I think people still don't have the whole ramifications of this new drug being legalized. So I just want to make sure that the public knows that one of the reasons also, I think that there is a business case for 5 and not maybe 3. It's because of this new this new pressure on the police force. So,
I'll let the superintendent answer that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. So, what I can say, ce que je peux vous dire, c'est.
What I can tell you is that we did not forget the new Cannabis Act. It will change our lives in the work that will be exercised by our members, but for the time being, we don't have the figures or the statistics as such that can tell us.
It's going to increase the work by, un montant certain. So, ce qu'on fait.
By a certain amount, what we do is we focus the drivers who will be on our road, who drive under the influence.
So, go for our membership and focus on that part. We know that will increase, so that's where our focus is for the instance right now. What we are working with, on travaille avec nos.
We are working with our superiors in Ottawa, with the general headquarters and the division.
To come up exactly avec la province, responsibilities will look like. Sûrement, ça va changer.
It will change, we know that, and we have received this question in the past.
Je suis au courant que
I'm aware that the other municipal force have educated a specific amount.
Honestly and responsibly say it's going to take that when we don't know that. So we are working with counterparts at the division level with the RCMP because it's not just here. Ça va affecter un quote.
It will affect everywhere.
And I think the focus is going to be on the drug-impaired driver. No different from we've been doing this in the past, but more notably ramping up our capacity for our members on the standard field sobriety testing on the road and also with our DRI. Ça, c'est les spécialistes. Je pense que j'ai déjà.
I think I've mentioned it this before in other meetings. This is our target for the near future. And you talk about the responsibility to be responsible. Well, to have good effectives, yes, it will have an effect on our budget. At the end, they don't want to take chances with the lives of people. I wanted to raise that issue. I think it's a good point to justify the increase in officers. Mr. Snow. Thank you, Worship. Sir Chrysler, please. Maybe it's for Ross McKay.
It's one of the highest crime severity amongst CMAs. You say, sir, we are in the top 10. Wouldn't that automatically bring us to a higher level as far as income? Wouldn't it automatically give us extra money, the fact that we are in this top 10?
I don't think so, Madame. As far as so, a couple of things about the crime severity index. It's a number, as Mr. McKay mentioned before, that's driven through our reporting, how we report different crimes that happen in the community. So, but the RCMP might do it quite a bit differently than, say, another, like, say, Fredericton, St. John, or other municipal forces that report on in the same manner. So that could change those numbers. Second point to consider is that the crime severity index for this region includes the southeast portion of the province. So c'est pas juste dans la.
So it's not only in the Moncton area, but it does include Sackville. I don't know exactly where it ends in Sackville.
Area. So that does perhaps inflate it a bit. Do we know how much? I can't answer that for you. And then to your point, as far as does that enable us to get some type of funding, that I have no clue. I've never heard anything around that. But there's different drivers that put that number higher. I know it's the crime severity, and when you hear crime severity, you think, oh my goodness, it's one thing I can assure you that is that any of the violent crimes that take place in the region, although they're taking place, we solve them. We have a very high percentage of solvability with those types of crimes. I believe some of the driver are some of the property crimes that we're trying to tackle that do drive those numbers up as well.
The mortalities that we've had in our police force, is that one of the elements that made us into the top 10 crime severity?
Well, that was back in 2014, so I think So it was, les chiffres sont de 2000.
The figures here are for 2016. I would say that they are not included in the figures. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gadet. Thank you, Worship. In the dealer work of an officer during the year, if we look at the rate of call or complaints that we receive in the community, there would probably be the traffic, the speed is number one, right? Number two would probably be the noise late at night. When young people meet and that bothers everybody, vandalism and maybe theft, bicycles, the theft of bicycles and whatnot. But if we look at all these elements, the first one that we have as far as complaints concerned is the question of speed on the road. We had a presentation last week from a group of citizens who came here, and they are complaining about the speed in different wards of the city. And I'm trying to find out, through your annual budget, do you give a priority to those kinds of problems? I know it's important to solve crimes and to prevent crime is important, but in the past, we had a group of officers who were devoted to highway patrol. They call it traffic patrol, traffic group or traffic zone or whatever. That was set aside, probably because of other priorities. Can we consider or can we think of coming back to have that kind of patrol that would be exclusively devoted to solve the speeding problems in our community? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Godet. Thank you. I understand what you're saying. The traffic is certainly one of our priority in our plan of annual performance. We know that about 30% of the complaints that we receive have to do with traffic.
You know, I always think about 30% of our time is in that area. Concernant
Now, as for the group dealing with traffic, specifically traffic, yes, we had a section of traffic in the past, a section that dealt only with traffic speeding. What I can tell you is that today, that is the responsibility of each member of each team. They deal with it in each community and the priority that we have already designated. For one, it's a traffic problem. We have a list of regular problems. Look at Dieppe, where the problems are, where we receive complaints.
focus on those particular areas, and we do that for each community. It's the responsibility of each of my members, so instead of having 3-4 people dedicated only to that, I have 80 members that can do that work. And we are when I look at the overall goal is to have safe roads and have no fatalities. And as I've said in the past, it's aggressive driving, it's unrestrained driving, it's impaired driving, drug and alcohol, as well as distracted driving. So by addressing those 4 major issues, that should, with the work that's being done, drive down our, serious injury crashes and fatalities. So in between that, we work on the problem areas. So,
speeding, the answer is always, well, tell us when and where it happened and we'll do something about it, which tells me that you're not on a constant basis checking this out. That's the first point. The second point is I rarely see officers with radar guns or on the side of the streets in neighborhoods checking out for speed in neighborhoods. And if it does happen, it's because we made a specific call and not because it's of a routine nature. So I'm just curious, how do 80 officers go around checking for speed unless they all have radar guns inside their car? It'd be pretty difficult to really come down and lay charges against somebody speeding if you're not equipped to do it during the course of a day's duties.
so each of the cars, there's not too many cars that I would say don't. I've ensured that we have that equipment in each of our cars, so they can measure the speed. Disons qu'on reçoit.
Let's say that we receive a complaint from a citizen. Our group of volunteers, they can use a radar gun just to do a survey in a specific area, and
in Troudersville. Go there and stay there for a day and see actually what's going on. Okay, so ça c'est je sais que
I know that we don't have enough members. This is why we are giving you our plans to expand our force so that we can better deal with these problems.
part of this. I'm still asking my members to focus on the priorities that we have set in consultation with the communities. And je vous encourage.
I encourage you in the future to give us these information so that we can better develop a specific plan at the same time.
I can,
Je,
like I say, I understand there's 30% of our calls, as I've said, are traffic related. So we address the ones that are the most important in each of the communities.
OK, merci.
if we want to maintain our schedule for tonight, maybe you can take one more question if we want to respect the agenda. If not, we thank you for your presentation. Sorry.
So
I'll do this quickly. Hey, listen, we'll send you the bill for the added time tonight. Mr. Superintendent, you mentioned that starting now, we have to notify you on speeding cases. I can affirm you that this is my second term on council, and I've brought this forward very often. Certain streets, there's a speeding that's increasing, and I can tell you that I've mentioned it, but nothing is done. So I think that in the future it's going to have to be addressed when we bring this forth to you, when we talk to your members about it here at the meetings. But I'm doing this in the sense that it has to be prevention, because I don't want to wait for accidents, because in my streets, I'm on Gaspé, there's Thibodaux. These are school zones, and there is really speeding. At one point, there's going to be fatalities, and this is what I want to avoid. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right. So I think that regularly members of council, during council meetings, bring this topic forth. And so even if we recognize that the agents can't be everywhere, we think that periodically, maybe, I think that at last the meeting we asked for a report specifically on the question of infractions on motor vehicles on a monthly basis. I think, okay, maybe the information is already available on your website, the CRPA site, specifically for traffic. It's something that we can check, maybe, or maybe a progression. I thought you were mentioning something, maybe that there's a question of continuing improvement. Maybe there's something that we could receive on a regular basis at the regular council meeting. A table that would show, for example, what's occurred over the last 2 years. This would be on maybe on a quarterly basis, and then we could see the progression. That's just a suggestion on our part. Yeah, okay, I'll raise the question with my management team. I want to ensure you that we want to work with you. Thank you very much, and have a good evening. The next presentation, I'm going to look at my agenda here. It's public transit. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. The presentation for tonight is to give you an idea of the different scenarios that we've had following the resolution of council of the 14th of September last. Exploration of the possibility of bringing back the bus until the Chartersville and Champlain intersection. Recommendations of the administration in consultation with Kodiak Transport and certain clients was done, and this is what we want to present to you tonight. So it's not for a decision, but obviously we would like to have a little bit of your feedback as to what we're presenting to you. So very quickly, context, Destination 2040, that's the transportation transit plan for all transit. So this is our guide, this is our vision basically that we are getting inspiration from. We're talking about frequency targets. I'm just reminding you that the frequency targets for Dieppe, our streets, are considered secondary. So the frequency is 15 minutes at high level times. Right now we're at 30 minutes. The council last year added funding. Thanks to you, kudos to you for adding service hours. Things are going really well. And with that, at the same time, we're in a stage here where we have the opportunity of getting funding through a federal, municipal, provincial program that is very generous. So we work with Kodiak Transport on this aspect. So tonight, we're presenting 4 scenarios that we've studied. And I know that you've received the information. So for the benefit of the people in the room, we'll go through the advantages and the disadvantages of each one. So the first one is to replace the vehicle that is used as a shuttle, replace it by a smaller bus. So what we believe is that there are certain people who would like to have a bigger vehicle, but they don't necessarily want the 6-people van. So it's one of the scenarios that we looked at. So obviously the advantages are we're capable of maintaining the frequency of 30 minutes that we have at Route 93. It maintains the consistency of the network. That means that there are transfers, so it's just the change of the vehicle, the means. So it meets the needs of the concerns of clients, and it offers a bigger capacity for passengers. So that's what we hear is there was a bus there, people would be more likely to use public transit. Certain disadvantages, if we replace a 6-passenger by a little bigger bus, there are additional costs because it's a larger vehicle, insurance, gas, etc. Another thing is that it could be considered as a disadvantage in the sense that if clients who want a bus or the return of that bus at that corner expect that it's going to eliminate the transfer at the co-op, we're talking about the vehicle, there will still be the transfer at the co-op IGA. Obviously, if the objective is the municipality purchase the vehicle, so it would be the proprietor, belong to the municipality, we have to check to make sure that we need at least 2 vehicles, because if one is broken down, or we need the opportunity to rent one elsewhere. So there's a cost, there's a replacement cost for these smaller vehicles, which usually are not as sturdy. So their life expectancy is less than 40 place bus. So all these are factors. Another thing also that we're mentioning at Kodiak Transpo is that if we compare the Kodiak buses with disability transit, there are quite a few that would be more similar to those. In case of storms, obviously these little buses will not remain on the road as long as the Kodiak Transpo. So that's kind of a side of the disadvantages. Scenario B would be basically, and that's directly related to your resolution, is to modify Route 293 and to go all the way to the intersection of Champlain, Lorette, Chartersville, as we had for a little while at one point. We had tried it once. So obviously that advantage is that we'd eliminate the transfer that's necessary at Co-op IGA. That would meet the concerns of some. Be a bigger capacity of passengers, and it also, depending on the route, have a service for businesses along Champlain between Boulevard Dieppe and Engelhardt Street. So we've already received requests from some businesses there. At one point there was a call center, Ding 5. I don't know if they're still there, but that's one example. Disadvantages for the scenario B, there are tests, pacing tests that were made by Kodiak Transport. Because of the distance, it's not possible to do that route in 30 minutes. So obviously it would increase the length of the route, so that for the client there are fewer starts at that point. So that's one disadvantage to be considered. Obviously, depending on the route, it would probably require the elimination of the service on Boulevard Dieppe that we have at Co-op IGA. If we continue on Champlain to go to the intersection, that means that there's a part of the route there or on the Pascal. So there would be a change of the route. Obviously, if the frequency is going to change, it's going to also present challenges for the transfer at Champlain. Right now, they're all approximately at 30 minutes. So if we have routes of 45 minutes, it's a little more difficult. If they're looking at a schedule, it's not going to be automatically every 30 minutes. It's still possible, but I'm still saying that it's a disadvantage. One of the things also that we have to identify with this scenario here is that the wish of the council to abolish the shuttle for the rest of the route or to maintain it. Here we considered that you want to maintain it. So if that's the case, then the shuttle, in this case, would go from Lorette to the extremity. It's just to remind you that what we had done at the beginning when we set up the shuttle, but we reacted very quickly because we realized that the length of the shuttle, the time was not enough. It had a lot of time to do its route. So that's when we decided 4 years ago, saying, okay, we can take advantage of this shuttle because we want it to be mobile. We don't want it to wait. So that's why we had brought the transfer at the IGA co-op. But so if we go back to that, that means that our shuttle will be there. We'll be waiting for a little while for the bus, and we figure that it's kind of a waste, basically, of our resources. Obviously, when we analyzed the scenarios last time, one of the reasons we went with a 6-passenger van is that our statistics showed that there was an overcapacity with the bus. Times have changed. There are other industries. There's Moncton Flight College that is growing. So maybe there's a need for this. Scenario C, exactly the same scenario, but that in this case we were considering eliminating the shuttle. So the advantages, it's fairly the same thing, but for the advantages there could be some savings if the shuttle is not there. There'll be savings, and then we can use as part of the difference. Some of the disadvantages is if we eliminate the shuttle during the time that we have the bus, if we stop at the corner of Champlain and Lorette, Chartersville, there are people who live in that Lakeburn sector who can walk and get there, except that it means that there's some customers who will not have the service anymore because of the lack of shuttle. I mean, there are not that many people. Maybe we've go beyond FedEx. I think maybe there are less than 10 customers, if we look at the statistics, who use the service. So it's fairly minimum. But if we're only at the corner of Champlain, Lorette, and Chartersville, we're still beyond the standard that we're trying to reach by 500 meters of walking distance. So it's one of the disadvantages. It's mentioned, just so at least you're aware of it. And then we looked at different other scenarios. We're trying to look at this with an open mind. So another scenario in discussion with Kodiak Transpo is the creation of a 4th route. Since a certain amount of time, we have a 4th bus that is there to use as a replacement, but we could use this bus and set it mobile to serve the Lakeburn region. So our proposal in scenario D is to create a route, because it's a pilot project, to try at high volume times, maybe sometimes also on Saturday, to be able to go all the way to the Lakeburn sector. So let's work it out, for example, where we could serve the Boys and Girls Club, the disc golf, and other services around that area. Obviously, if we're talking about a route that would be starting at Champlain Mall, we could, with a service in Lakeburn, we could have a higher frequency service along Champlain Street, which once again is one of our long-term objectives. It would also permit higher frequency, maybe 20 minutes, with our normal 93 route. We're talking about new revenue, and also it would be aligned with our D2040 vision. Obviously, if we can have a new route like this, there would be the possibility of eliminating the needs of the transfer at the Co-op IGA. We could still have our 93 that does its normal route, but this other route would go all the way to Lakeburn, would give the opportunity for these people to use the bus, avoiding the transfer at Co-op IGA. If you can follow me on the route, and it's okay, the route is not definitive now, it can go differently, but basically it would go from Champlain Mall to Lakeburn, going either by Champlain or coming back on Chartersville, for example, coming back on Dieppe Boulevard and Champlain once again. So it would give direct access to customers at the corner of Lakeburn to go without transfer to Champlain Mall and even downtown. That's one of the things that we identified, and we were told in consultation is 93 is good, except that when you come back on 93, it turns on College Street, and then you go on Gould to go to Champlain. So, but somebody who wants to come to the market or the art center or the library, when you come back, you have to go all the way to Champlain Place and come back with it or walk. And so with a fourth bus and another route, we might be able to find a solution for this, which means that the bus could come back completely on Champlain, come by in front of a municipal hall, and basically that would improve the service. So that's a little bit what we're looking at as a scenario, as certain advantages. Another that I should mention, the last one, is that we have certain customers who want to use the shuttle to go to the co-op, but they don't want to use the bus. We have this, it's a kind of a gray zone, we've addressed it. What we thought was that, okay, maybe when there's a fixed route of the shuttle, whether there are customers or not, they can get on. Okay, the driver can say, you're going for the bus, but if we had a bus in the past, we could work it. So we didn't police that, except that when we have routes on request, that wouldn't work. Then the driver will not do a special way, or for customers who don't have a transfer to the bus. So here, what we could offer a service to these customers who just want to go to the co-op, for example, the IGA, but so they have a bus pass, so that would be revenues, and that would be another advantage. As far as disadvantages, there aren't that many. There may be more, but I think that it would be beneficial. But obviously, there would be the reduction, and there'd be a loss of service for some customers. But I know that when we did the changes in 2013, we had mentioned that we cannot be everything for all. Sometimes we have to make choices, and obviously in this case, there's a loss of service for some customers, so that's something that we have to note. And there's also an increase of annual expenses, and I just modified it. I gave you an amount in your, but I received some information this morning, so it's changes, so it'll be less than the 80,000 that I mentioned. I think that there are ways, and I'm discussing with Kodiak. We're looking at doing something that's going to be less expensive than that. So obviously there are disadvantages. If we add services, then there'll be additional costs. So I'll finish with a little bit the next steps. Our process of implementation of the pilot project, if the council wants to continue with that, is first of all to have an indication from council as to the different scenarios. So we can come back on the 22nd or later with a resolution. Obviously for us today, we'd be recommending scenario D, but you're going to be deciding basically in the long run. So once we have a decision, we'll have to inform Kodiak. We'll have to work with our service providers of the shuttle because it will impact them. And there'll be if there's a decision that comes fairly quickly, there's a possibility of implementing this service with Kodiak starting January. But obviously we'd have to decide in the next couple of weeks. So as next steps with the pilot project, we want to make sure we have good success indicators and that we're capable of having a good assessment and then a decision from council to maintain, continue with the pilot project. So that concludes what I want to tell you, the update and the project. I'm open. If you have questions, comments, I know that we're going to be meeting with some members of council, so you have the floor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions on the scenario D. Eliminates the shuttle service completely? No, just when the bus is there. So let's say that the shuttle service, the bus would be offered at high volume times and Saturday morning. During those periods, there wouldn't be shuttle service. There would be no shuttle service. Because I know that you were saying that in the past, the shuttle service was going Charlersville, Lorette, all the way to the end of the municipality. The route was much shorter than the bus, so there were wait times. If we have a fourth bus and we have go along twice, the shuttle service couldn't be regular still because with the two bus routes, they would be coming and going. Wouldn't there be enough for the shuttle? No, what we're saying is that we can't have the two. I mean, financially, the idea with the 93 as it is now wouldn't change. And then after, at high volume time, we'd have this fourth bus that would go its route to go to Lakeburn, Cop Barnes, etc., and come back. The shuttle service, we could have the shuttle service on request as it is now when the bus is not there. Because it's a pilot project, this is what our suggestion is, that instead of there's a cost for it, setting up a pilot project. Instead of doing it all the time, it's a pilot project. Let's try it. Let's try it at the high volume times, because that's when we have the most people who are moving around. That's why we're suggesting to do it at that time. We're looking at Domaine du Ruisseau. Yeah, Domaine du Ruisseau is served by the shuttle, so it's basically part of the route of the new fourth bus. Yes, so the only region that wouldn't be served by the service would go beyond Barnes to go to the end of the municipality, close to the old Lakeburn. All right. Thank you, Monsieur Godet. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the question, the high volume times between 7 in the morning and 10, 7 to 9, 4 to 6. People from Kodiak will probably give more details. What we're looking at is routes starting at 7:30, 7:15 in the morning till maybe 9:30, 9:45, and coordinated with people who work maybe only at 10 o'clock at Champlain Place for shifts. And then the afternoon, it would be the same thing from 4:15 till probably 6 p.m. So let's say that the bus, if it seems to be very interesting, it would be a considerable increase of the use. Could we consider maybe that in the second phase, if there is a second phase, to go beyond the high volume times? Consider maybe going maybe 2 or 3 hours extra a day? Yes, I think there's nothing more that we would like. For us is that, hey, listen, it's really successful. The more people who take the bus, this is what we want. The evaluation or the pilot project is going to tell us, according to the indicators, are the customers there? Is there an increase of revenue? And then the comments of the customers. Those are basically three key indicators. And if we have that, we realize, yes, it's positive and we're headed in the proper direction, then it'll be up to council to decide whether we continue or not. It's always a question of basically financial, because the services that we offer, it's expensive, but certainly it will be part of the evaluation. So where we're at now in our reflection is council has asked us for a pilot project of 4 months. We're in discussions with Kodiak Transport. They were suggesting more of something like 6 months. 6 months, because it could take a month and a half before we communicate to the people realize it, and they kind of embrace it. So it's also going to be in January. So going to the end of June, that could give us a good 6 months of a pilot project. And then afterwards, 3-4 months, we'll have a good indication as to what is going on. So maybe council will possibly take a decision for the rest of the year after 4 or 5 months. But we'll have to work on the financial part, because when we're going to set up something, we want to make sure that the funding is there if we decide to continue also. Last question. The next Kodiak budget that's going to be after, will that budget include this possibility or not? No, it won't be there. We will be presenting the status quo as far as hours concerning what's demanded. At what point will you be able to come back with the costs? The real cost. I hope that'll be very soon. Like I said, I have new information that came in this morning. And so depending on the wish of council, if you want to go with option D, if you want to go with another option, though it's not our recommendation, we'll go forward with whatever you tell us to do. Thank you, thank you. Conseiller Thibodeau. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, a comment and then a question. The comment is that I'm really happy that you're suggesting scenario D, because I think this one has the most chance of succeeding. It's the most promising one for the future. My question, we talk often about purchasing small buses, and it depends on the provincial, federal grants. At what moment can we hope to receive these buses? I'm not expert in purchasing, but Kodiak, who's after me, can probably confirm. But what I understand, first of all, we're waiting for the provincial government to be able to put in a request of funding. So once we have that, once the request, it goes usually fairly quickly, but the service providers across Canada, there are a lot of requests. So if I'm not mistaken, maybe 10 to 12 months for small buses, depending on whether it's stainless or not. So the soonest for us, end of 2019, if I understood properly. And that's one of the challenges of scenario one. If we have the small buses, we could have done that, but we don't have them. Thank you. No other questions. So thank you for your presentation. And there will be consultation with council for a recommendation in the budget process with Monsieur Thériault.
Kodiak Transit.
Kodiak Transit is next. Good evening, welcome, one and all. Good evening. Thank you. Thank you for your attention.
Oh, I'll do an introduction. My name's Angela Elaine. I'm the manager at Kodiak Transpo, and I'm joined by Germaine Mercier. She's a financial analyst that oversees our department. So I'm just going to give a few highlights on the operational side of transit. Germaine's going to present the budget, so we'll go through this quite quickly. And thank you, Luke, for the very detailed explanation you did on the different route options. It was nice for us to be here to hear that. Basically, first of all, I want to thank you for having us as your service provider for public transit. It's a great experience for us. Our employees are really pleased with it. You've done a lot of growth this year, so that's been really helpful for morale in our department, and I congratulate you on investing in transit. It's very good foresight on your behalf to do that for your community, and it benefits ridership in all three communities because of the growth that you've put in place. Overall, Kodiak Transpo ridership is slated and on target for about 2% growth. Yours here in Dieppe is higher because of the additional service you've implemented, plus it was doing quite well before that. I wanted to thank Councillor Gaudet for the good work he does with our governance committee, and also Luc Richard, who works with us regularly. We have tri-community managers meetings in addition to governance committee meetings, where a lot of planning is done in order to move our whole department forward. So we really appreciate this input. The 2019 budget remains focused on finding cost efficiencies and meeting the revenue targets, and it is based on current service levels. And Germaine will provide the highlights of that in just a minute. I just wanted to give you a couple of highlights that you may have heard in the news. We are improving some technology on the buses in the coming year. So probably about a year from now, before all this will be in place, but we're purchasing new fare boxes that'll have amenities on them for customers, and also replacing, we have GPS on all the buses today, but we're going to upgrade that to a CAD AVL, which is a computer-aided dispatch vehicle location system That will give us a lot more data about passenger boardings, where they boarded, GPS coordinates of that, transfers that happen. So it gives us a lot more information for planning. So we look forward to those, and those are all, as mentioned earlier, those are possible through funding from federal infrastructure programs. We also have put some marketing efforts toward promoting employer passes. So we offer discounts to employers, and that's we've got 3 large contact centers on board with that right now. So we're going to continue to work on that. And we have done a lot in recruitment and training. So we've hired 14 operators since May, and they're now all trained and working. So we're in really good shape operationally with the fleet and with staff. So that's a big improvement from a year ago. So I just wanted to let you know that's all in good shape. And I'm going to turn it over to Jermaine to go over the budget.
Good evening.
Bonsoir.
I'm going, thank you so much. I'm going to go over the Tri-Community Public Transit operating budget, which is, as Angela said, the current service level. As you can see, our 2018 budget was at 10.4 million, and our 2019 budget is going up to 10.9 million. The major variances are our contractual agreements plus our fuel cost. As you can see, and it's mostly in the bus operations. The admin and general expenses, very little increase. The building, a little bit of a drop. But the bus operating, the bus maintenance service crew is basically where you're going to see your major lifts. So this is the city, the Ville de Dieppe. This is your budget. Your 2019 proposed budget will be $1.066 million, up from your 2018, which was reformatted for the $200,000 increase that your council approved in July. So just as in the previous, your major lifts are going to be in your operating, your bus operations, your fuel. Service crew is basically the same. Bus maintenance, replacement buses is up a touch. Dieppe had 1 spare in 18, and the new formula changes by kilometer. So, and there's no spares in 2019, so there's a touch of a lift, and it's very fair. And there's a $10,000 increase in the direct bill for your bus maintenance. And in 2018, there was 2 major engine rebuilds, and you have 2 buses that are over 800,000 clicks, and there are 2 new buses, of course. Revenue is going to increase a touch because of the new service level. And as in the bottom, you'll see the direct bill shelter maintenance. There's 5 locations. There's so much per week. Glass and panel repairs. There's an increase there. There's more glass repairs. So that comes up to your 1.066. That is showing, yeah, please. This is just showing, yeah, the slide 2 and slide 3 are basically the same, but showing you in different scenarios. Showing your expenditures. This is where it's showing you your council approved 200,000, which is in the other slide, is just built in a different way. So basically it's 21,395, which is a 2.05% lift, which is very, we've done our best. So this is your existing service level.
Question de la part des membres du Conseil.
Questions from the councillors. Councillor Cormier. Thank you, Worship. Thank you for being there. My question has to do with bilingualism. The bus drivers, what is the percentage of drivers that are bilingual according to the standards that were established a few years ago?
You an exact percentage number, unless Luke, you have it. I don't recall. Definitely an improvement. I'm thinking it's close to 50%. It may be higher than that. All the people that we hire for the last number of years have to have basic level 1 French. And if they do not, then we provide training for that. So it's definitely improved and has continued to improve. But I should have thought of that, and I will get you the number because I think it's better than we think.
Just my personal curiosity.
Yes, no, it's a very good question, and it's really focused on customer service. So it's a great initiative that you were a great proponent of on the governance committee for sure. It continues to last.
Okay. Une autre question de la part des membres du Conseil?
Any other questions from the councillors? No. Therefore, once again, thank you very much for your presentation, but thank you for the improvements in the service, especially language-wise. It was noticed by many people, and it is to your advantage, to your benefit, service-wise, for the customers and the people of Dieppe appreciate it. Don't be surprised if it's not a factor for the increase of traffic on the bus. Thank you. There. Transaqua with Mr. Rice. With David Muir. And our new representative, Mr. Gagnon. Good evening to both of you. And Monsieur Chanel Michaud. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I am David Muir, president of Transaqua. I have with me tonight Kevin Rice, executive director, and your representative Shannon Michaud and Yves Gagnon.
The extent of my presentation in French. I'm going to leave most of the presentation to...
We're very impressed. We're very impressed.
Well, I try a little bit, but that's the best I can do.
Good. C'est bien, ça. C'est excellent.
Kevin's going to do the bulk of the presentation of the budget, the capital budget, and the operating budget. And I'm just going to lead you through, just for familiar sake, our vision and our mission statement. And if you recall, our vision to be an outstanding environmental steward, supporting regional planning, economic development, and quality of life for the communities of Moncton, Riverview, and Dieppe. And we did have a strategic planning exercise a little while ago, and this essentially hasn't changed. And our mission, collect and treat wastewater in a reliable, cost-efficient, and environmentally responsible manner. And those are all things we do try to live by day to day at the Commission. I'll just talk a little bit about the priorities that we have in our budget for 2019. A lot of it has to do with our ongoing project to upgrade the facility, and we're going to complete construction of the 4th clarifier and the sludge handling building, design and tender construction projects for our bioreactor and the blower building, begin the centrifuge retrofit, and also ensure cost-effective and sustainable delivery while freezing the unit rate for 2019 at $210. And we're still in process of trying to accredit our laboratory. We'll also be trying to increase advertising on our vehicles, our compost toilets, in an attempt to raise our visibility in the community. And in the office, Kevin and his staff will be developing an asset management strategy, continuing to develop a computerized maintenance system, and also upgrade our records management system. So those are the basic priorities that the board has put forth for the staff. And now I'll call upon Kevin to come forth and do the dirty details on the budget.
Thank you, David.
Bonsoir, Monsieur le maire et le conseil. Merci à vous de présenter le budget. 2019 de Transvaquois, je présenterai le budget en anglais cette année. So basically, our capital budget this year has, we have a lot of work to do with the upgrade project. As David had mentioned earlier, we plan to begin the ultraviolet detail design. It was originally planned for 2020, but we're actually moving ahead and working with our engineering consultant to push the schedule ahead. Our centrifuge upgrades will begin later this year. It will continue into 2019, construction of the bioreactor. We're putting out an excavation tender next month, and we'll start digging the ground, and we'll start actual construction next spring. The sludge handling building is under construction now. The blower building will be built next year, and the upgrade of the clarifier equipment and the centrifuges will begin in the spring. Fox Creek wastewater pumping station upgrade, we have the detailed design in place now. We expect to tender that early next year for a 2-year construction period starting in 2019. The Bulbasan wastewater pumping station to add an emergency backup power system. We were hoping to get that system in place this year. However, with other priorities, we had to push that back a year to next year. Replacement of pumps at wastewater pumping station. We would need to replace our main pumping station elevator, 2 sludge tank valves, biosolids mixing tractor, compost facility, utility vehicle, records management software, compost toilet. We're looking to redesign our compost toilets and then look at how many we have to replace. I do understand that the city of Dieppe has requested an additional compost toilet that we're working with your department on trying to provide that. And also CSO gate replacement near Taylor Ford is on our list for next year. So the implementation of the long-term capital budget, you've seen this many times before, but capital spending will ramp up in the next year, especially in 2019 as we start the bioreactor, and will continue into 2021. And then we still have the second river crossing planned for Virginia Street to the wastewater treatment facility in 2015, start the design and construction between 2015 and 2017. So that is still on our radar, and a lot of our CSO work we expect to do beginning in 2030, 2031. So one of the things that we look at with our capital expenditures is just a reminder. I've been reinforcing this for a couple of years with our computerized maintenance management system, our asset management system. By the year 2025, 2026, the capital reserve account will be diminished. So what we need to do by the end of 2020 is we will have a full understanding of what our infrastructure deficit is and what planning we need to do for future years to add more funds to our capital reserve account, because we'll have in the order of about $200 million worth of assets that we need to maintain on an ongoing basis. So I just want to make sure that I reinforce that for this council. The key budget issues that we have this year, we look at an increase in property tax because we are adding more buildings, more infrastructure. So our property taxes are increasing, our insurance as a result as well, and electricity. So we're using a lot more electricity for the project in the order of about $100,000 more this year than we did last year, and that's just basic project related alone. We're looking at increase in wages as per our collective agreement. Rate increases related to workers' compensation board. So we've all heard about increases, so we've made some assumptions there. We're looking to enter into a biosolids amendment supply agreement with some local suppliers. So the rate for our amendment material has been the same for the last 8 years. So those suppliers have asked for an increase in the price they receive for transportation, but also for the mills where we get our supply from. So we've got a 10-year plan in our agreement, and we're just waiting to have that ratified by the board and agreed to by the suppliers. So 2019, the unit rate, the commission, the budget that's been received by the commission freezes it at $210, and that's for the 3rd year in a row. But again, I go back to my previous comments about the infrastructure deficit, and where we'll know in 2020 how that's going to impact the rates on a go-forward basis. We're looking at a projected increase in revenue for our septic loads. So right now, trucks come in, they dump the load, they fill it with slip, it's on the honor system. However, with the new septic receiving facility that will be commissioned in the next couple of months, they actually have a flow meter in there. So when the septic haulers come and dump it off, we'll know exactly what the volume is that they're dumping so we can invoice them properly. We expect that we've been under in revenue for many, many years, and we expect that once the flow meter comes online, that our revenue will increase significantly. And also on compost, we're receiving a lot more uptake from the community, which is very positive. A lot more people are choosing to use our bucket to load their trucks, and that's, it's still a nominal fee, but it's adding up, which is fantastic. And we're looking at increased equipment and vehicle maintenance. So we have a number of our heavy equipment that's starting to get older that we need to replace and also maintain. So employee training. So in our strategic plan, we've committed to 40 hours a year for each employee to receive training, be it safety training, be it training outside of in our industry training for our wastewater associations, those types of things. We've seen a reduced cost for landscaping because we're digging everything up. So we're saving some money on grass cutting and snow plowing, which is good. There will be an increased cost for consulting services for our computerized maintenance management system. We've kind of hit a plateau, so we're hiring a consultant to come in and be a champion and tell us what else we need to do. So we need some help there. And also we're looking at remote compost sites. We're going to do a study that looks at strategic locations throughout the 3 communities as to where we may be able to have a remote compost site where citizens can come and take compost rather than going to our existing facilities. So we'll see what the feasibility of that looks like. And a reduced cost for governance practices. That's, I believe, self-explanatory. Increased water and sewer use charges for project construction activities. So we have to commission our grit tanks and our primary tanks and our secondary tanks, and we have to fill them with potable water. So we will be using quite a bit of water to make sure we commission those tanks properly and they don't leak. So that's our biggest challenge. So the 2019 budget, with respect to revenue, ordinary expenditures, surplus, and capital expenditures. Our total revenue in 2018 was $21,920. That'll increase to $33,713,886 in 2019. We have started to cash out the ratepayers' GICs. We cashed one last year because we are starting to make more expenditures. We're holding off as long as we can, but just so council is aware that we are starting to use ratepayer funds to fund the project now. So we see a big increase in our funding grant. So that's basically attributed to the bioreactor. That's about a $40 million piece of the puzzle. So that will be starting next year, and that will cause some significant expenditures. Our ordinary operating expenditures have only increased by 2.3%. I think we've done a pretty good job with respect to that. And the administration expenditures have increased by 7%, and that's more for adding more funding for consultants to do some of these studies that I had previously mentioned. So overall, we expect about a $4.4 million surplus in the operating that will automatically be transferred over to towards the capital projects. So here we look at our capital expenditures, our final clarifiers. That's the secondary clarifiers, about $7 million we expect to spend. We've already ordered the mechanisms for those that will arrive next spring to be installed. Some of these items are a good 8-10 months lead time, so the expenditures will actually, even though we've ordered them now, will not come out of our account until 2019 when we receive them. The bioreactors, you're seeing about $19 million there. And the UV disinfection design will get started for about $150,000. Our centrifuge upgrades will begin and hopefully be finished by the end of next year. We're looking at $4.3 million for that. So basically the centrifuges right now currently deal with primary sludge. The old inner mechanisms have to be replaced to deal with secondary sludge. It has very different characteristics, so it has to be upgraded to meet those characteristics. The Fox Creek pumping station, $2.3 million. And then we look at about $2.4 million. We do understand out of our we see about $617,000 in our operations, just upgrading software and maintaining our equipment. So as I mentioned, we have increased maintenance, and you see that reflected in there for $280,000. So our goal, again, is just for secondary treatment and UV disinfection that will allow our wastewater flowing into the Petitcodiac River to meet the guidelines for Canadian recreational water. And they're available to answer any questions you may have.
Merci. Monsieur Rice, question de la part des membres du Conseil.
Any questions from the councillors? Mr. Godet?
Regarding your secondary treatment project, could you give me an idea how it's going? Are you on time, on budget, et cetera? Because we've heard rumblings that there maybe have been some initial problems, and we're wondering how's that reflecting on the overall budget?
Well, we just to put a plug in, we are offering a tour for elected officials this Friday at 1 p.m. to come and actually tour the facility and see what's been done to date. But phase 1 and phase 2, the general contractor's contract was supposed to be finished on June 25th. Due to some issues, delays, coordination, lack of coordination, lack of planning, we don't expect them to actually complete that contract until January. So as far as that project goes, based on the bids, it was under budget. The change orders have amounted, the change orders that came in, the request was over about $1.2 million. But with our staff negotiating, rejecting, we've only paid out about $600,000 of that contingency fund so far. So we think we're doing very good with respect to that. We are progressing as, we saw what was going on with phase 1 and phase 2 with the general contractor. And we made a decision with the support of the commission back in the spring that phase 3, 4, and 5, Transaqua is the general contractor. So we're not going out for bids for general contractor. We assigned internal staff to be a project manager, and another internal staff, we seconded our lead operator to be the construction manager. And we hired a junior engineer, and we also hired a safety services consultant. So we are well on track with phase 4 and phase 3C that we are now managing, and we are continuing to work with the general contractor for phase 1 and phase 2 to resolve some of the quality and construction issues that have been ongoing. As far as I can say now, we've verbally been informed by Infrastructure Canada and RDC. We submitted a business plan for incremental costs. Because we're the general contractor, there's a lot of money that can be saved on general overhead, profit, bonding, insurance, et cetera, that benefits the ratepayer. So that business case was verbally accepted by Infrastructure Canada last week at an oversight committee meeting when they came to tour. And that business case basically will save the ratepayers a little more than $3 million by having Transaqua be the general contractor. So we're making those decisions, not, we're putting a lot of thought into it. It's a lot of work for our staff. We have a small staff, but very committed, very dedicated. And I would say to date, we are well under budget. Shouldn't say that, but we are. And we hope to finish the project under budget and on time. So phase 1 and phase 2 wasn't critical to the overall success. However, it is starting to interfere with our phase 3 and 4 plans. So we have told the contractor that we need to pick it up.
So you have a comfort level that's pretty good right now?
I have a very good comfort level right now. Yes, I have full confidence in our staff, and they're doing a fantastic job.
Okay. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur Alain.
Thank you, Mr. Alain.
Councillor, my colleagues, so phase 1, phase 2 would be the final clarifiers in the bioreactor. Would that be phase 1, phase 2?
No, the phase 1 and phase 2 is the preliminary and primary treatment. So we were building a couple of grit tanks onto the 2 existing that we had, and we were building the primary clarifiers. So the existing primary clarifiers are being converted to secondary clarifiers. So phase 1 and phase 2 is just the primary clarifiers being built, the grit tanks, new fine screens, and the rest of the project, the bioreactor, the 4th clarifier, the sludge handling building, the UV is all be managed by Transaqua.
So out of step 1 and 2, how much would that be out of it's not part of the 30 million, obviously.
Right, Phase 1 and Phase 2 had a value of about $12.5 million.
So $600,000 comes to about 10%. So, okay. So the new guidelines for the Canadian recreational waters for the public out there. So it's 2020 that the new guidelines or implementation of the Transaqua's treatment center have to be done by, or is it past 2020?
By the end of 2020, we have to meet the federal regulation effluent limits for TSS and BOD and nitrogen. The ultraviolet isn't a requirement under the federal effluent regulations. It's kind of an add-on. It's common in the industry to add ultraviolet treatment to kill any of the fecal coliforms, the bacteria that's harmful to fish and the people that want to use that water recreationally. That's not regulated. That's just something that is industry practice, and that's something that we've adopted.
So with all these new construction, we'll be on time and under budget.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Perfect, thank you.
Merci, Monsieur Alain.
Thank you. No one else? Mr. Godet?
Deuxième présence au bâton.
My question is related to the efficiency of the secondary treatment system. It's a biosystem, from what I understand. The question I have is, there are certain aspects of our three communities where there is a mixture of groundwater and sewage systems that are not separated out. In other words, in Dieppe, all our systems are separate. In Moncton, there is an area in downtown Moncton where it's all one system. Can you tell me how that impacts on this new system? And does it reduce the efficiency of it, or does it increase the overall cost of operating? What happens when you have those two mixtures coming together like that?
Well, basically, it has a lot to do with just sheer volume. So, I mean, the more water you have, the more it's going to cost you to treat that water. We've designed the treatment facility upgrade to make sure that we can adapt to future population growth. Of course, as you're aware, this community is growing quite exponentially. We designed it for a 40-year life to match the population by 2040 and beyond. And what we're hoping to do in working with the City of Moncton, they have a huge combined sewer separation project plan for Wheeler Boulevard. They're trying to coordinate that with our upgrade of the Virginia Street Pumping Station in 2025 and the second river crossing. So the second river crossing will basically take all of that, what we call hot sewage, not diluted by stormwater, and bring it directly into our inlet. So that will increase the efficiency quite a bit. That's what we're hoping, and as Moncton continues its combined sewer separation projects and sends more hot sewage to us, that will decrease our demands for pumping, the electricity, wear and tear on the pumps, and it will make our process much more efficient. So going from chemical treatment to biological treatment is a huge shift. And one of the things we have to do next year is work with the citizens to help them understand what to put down the pipes and what not to. Since we put in our fine screens that we commissioned about a month ago, what we're seeing is a lot of these so-called flushable wipes, and we're also seeing a lot of organics, a lot of carrots, peas, things that shouldn't be in the sewer system that will result in us having to put more oxygen into the bioreactor to let the bugs do their job. So if we can remove those things from the system, that would be the biggest impact to helping our efficiency. So next year we want to work with the public and communicate about what not to put down their pipes, and also work with the homeowners association, the house builders, because I believe from what I hear is that new houses are being built with carburetors. So we don't want people using carburetors because they just literally put everything down the sink. And that has a major impact on the efficiency of our treatment process. So we're going to embark on that, work with the restaurant association to see, if what they can do or what they're already doing, not doing, about putting, organic waste down the pipe. So there's a lot of efficiencies that we're looking at that we can improve upon. But to answer your question, Absolutely. The combined sewers is mainly a sheer amount of flow, and it dilutes, and especially during wet weather events. It limits our ability to treat everything. But with the new design, at least if there's a major wet weather event, especially in the spring, whatever the plant can handle in the bioreactor, at least it'll get preliminary treatment and primary treatment before it goes to the river.
I dare say, though, that probably 50% of the residences in Dieppe have carburetors, so maybe that's
We've got
too high a number, but I would suspect it's a lot.
We've got a lot of work ahead of us, and you know, really, we've got 2 years to get the message out, to work with our citizens and help them understand what the impacts of just that simple action is. And we've created a sewer do's and don'ts brochure that last year that we've invited the municipalities to include when they mail out their water and sewer bills as an educational piece. Riverview did that last year, and we're certainly inviting Moncton and Dieppe to get on board and help us spread that message that way. And I'm working with members of the technical committee to bring that message forward. So we have a little bit of education work over the next 2 years, and we're certainly looking for your support.
Thank you. Merci, Monsieur Godette.
Thank you, Madame Arsenault.
Somebody who just moved into our community, his first thing that he wanted to do in his new house was put in a carburetor. And that's exactly what I told him, that I thought it was against the rules for our environment and it was not good for us. So thank you for pointing it out and reassuring us again. Thank you.
Merci, Madame Arsenault.
Thank you, Madame Arsenault. Nothing else? No? Okay. So thank you to the Trans Aqua team. We really appreciate your work. I believe that there's much work to do on the carburetor side, like it was mentioned, and it's funny because our friends in the waste, they would want us to put it in the green bag because it's going to help them, to work out, would help their compost. So maybe the two agencies could work together. There's probably something to do. Obviously, it starts with the residents. That's where education is going to start.
The kind of thing we don't think of when we're in the house and we just flush it, right? All right. Thank you all. Maintenant,
And now, the last presentation of the evening, but not the least, Expansion Dieppe and its team with Monsieur Godbout and some members of the board who are here at the back of the room. Thank you very much. I'm going to get rid of this. So good evening, everybody. I don't think it's working the way I thought it was going to work. Yeah, it's okay. Not here. I have e-notes in my processor. Yeah, as we mention very often, problems are 18 inches from the screen. It's one of the first things at work that the IT technicians have taught me. The problem is always 18 inches away from the screen. Well, I'm going to start, and I hope that they'll be able to find a solution in the meantime. So, good evening, Mr. Mayor. Good evening to the Municipal Council colleagues. And I would like to start before I start, the fact that there are other people from Expansion Dieppe here, so with us, volunteers, the administrators who are at the board, Madame Gauvin, our president, and our Secretary Treasurer, Mr. Stever, as well as my colleagues, the Guy Légère and Jacques Leblanc, who are here. So, we have 30 minutes, so I'm going to try to go through this in the required time. You will notice that we're presenting a summary of the accomplishments of the previous year to basically support our funding request at Municipal Hall here for the next year. So that's for the operational part of our budget. There are other aspects of our operations that are under different funds that are not part of this here. So you'll see a little bit more detail in the slides that we have here, that more than the ones that you've received in your kits. So, for information, you have 22 minutes left. So to ensure a prosperous economy and sustainable at the heart of a modern and inclusive community. That's our vision with our strategic plan 2015-2020, and our mission is to work with entrepreneurs, developers, and strategic partners in order to foster diversified economy, ensuring continued growth in Dieppe. So our priority streams for the next years are the following that you will see on the screen. All right. The first one is to business stream. The next 5 streams, 2 to 6, are community economic development, and they support our main stream, which is attraction and expansion of businesses. So if I just have 20 minutes, I will continue. Our board of administration, composed of these 12 people here that you see on the screen. I want to note some new names: Councillor Godet and Councillor Le Boutillier, who is not here tonight. For your information, Madame Le Boutillier is with us through WebEx. So good evening, Lise. And Monsieur Abud, who is a pharmacist, entrepreneur in town, and Annie Duguay, who is the representative of the city of Dieppe, our team. Quickly, the only thing that I want you to note is that there are some people who have joined the team over the last 18 months: Jacques Leblanc, Marie Lefrance, and Jean-Denis Haché, Chantal Ferguson. In the case of Monsieur Leblanc, I'm going to say that he's joined us formally because he really was seconded to us really for 2 years, but now he is formally part of our team. And we're really happy to have him with us, as it is the case for all the other people with us. Our mandate is to increase the tax base of the city. And how do we do that? Basically, by doing 3 specific things. Available lands for entrepreneurs, investors, and we play the part a little bit of a broker for the city. We want to have a prosperous economic environment to attract people, because those people are the ones who are helping the growth and acting as facilitators with our entrepreneurs and investors who are looking for business opportunities here in Dieppe. Here are the three sectors that we're concentrating our efforts on. The downtown area. In yellow, you have the commercial zone, basically, and then you have the broadened downtown area where we have projects, and we're trying to densify the investments. Also, then along Dieppe Boulevard with the Technology and Business Park, we're working to move forward. We'll give you a little more details a little later on for the development of lands on that road. And then the industrial park and future phases. So that's the orange park that's already developed for the most part. Some lands remain to be sold. And then in yellow, it's for future phases of development. And in blue, we see the technology and business park. We're looking at, we're trying to find out the evolution of building permits in our community. So for us, it's an important measurement. And we're looking to reach some objectives, basically to obtain the investments that we're looking for in non-residential. The reason why we're pushing the non-residential sector is to have a tax base that is as balanced as possible. One of the objectives in our strategic plan is to try to get a balance of 60% residential and 40% non-residential. And as you see, there's been progress in that sense over the last couple of years, except for the 2018, where we've been in regression a little bit. But so now residential that we're trying to reduce from 65 to 60, and non-residential that we're trying to increase from 35 to 40%. The next slides are to show a little bit of the projects that have occurred in our community over the last 2 years, actually, to get a sense of the investments that are made by your private entrepreneurs. So these next slides are basically constructions on private lands. So it's not lands that we've sold to the investors. They were built over the last year, 2017, and inaugurated in 2018. So we start with the Syrah projects on Sunset and Thérèse Street, the office project at 2185 on Champlain Street, all the way on the other side, at the other end of Champlain Street. Renovations at the Holiday Inn Express on Dieppe Boulevard. Renovations and improvements at the building on the Boulevard Malenfant, which is the property of AdLink, and which is basically occupied by Construction Acadienne, who have space there today. Then the multi-residential project that was constructed on Cannon Street, the multi-residential that is in the process of being built on Boulevard Dieppe. The improvements and renovations with an expansion at the Bolorama on Gauvin Road, the Al-Assi project on Champlain Street. The second phase of construction at the Centre Hébert from Buteco Properties on Engelhardt Street. The expansion at the what's called the Raleigh Motorplex at 950 on Champlain Street. And now, on a land that Expansion Dieppe sold, the MCS sanitation project on Benjamin Street. And we're really proud of what we're seeing here and what is going with Road 15 that is now open. The accomplishments in the sector, some slides that we don't have because we don't have that presentation. The industrial park, we have lands that we've sold on Benjamin Street, small parcels to Metaltech and Broadway on Industrial Street. And what's missing on this slide, access from Highway 15. That is open now, and it's been on the plans for a long term, and finally the province finalized this year with the acquisition of the lands. Downtown, CHNB, 3 properties, and there's been the announcement of TD at the CF Champlain with the creation of jobs. Downtown, we have to remember that we're working on the master plan that was adopted by municipal council, so we're working on finalizing that, and we're working on the business plan that was going to be presented to the board, and after which we'll present it to municipal council with the support of the board. In the industrial park expansion, purchase of lands along the Highway 2, most of it was done in 2017. Concerning the communication and marketing strategy, according to the activation plan, we're in the process of reworking the website. There was a banquet in March with 340 guests, regardless of the storm. Many people will remember. If not, we do remember. Innovation 2018, that's going to happen on the 1st of November, the second version of Innovation. This year, the theme will be on collaboration. So a little bit of a advertisement here. All those who are managers are welcome. Tickets are being sold, and we've already gone above 50% of tickets sold. CRID is still going forward with Center for Innovation and Research to go to the next step. They've had improvement projects that were a success, and we're looking at transferring into 3 other projects elsewhere in the province. We'll be collaborating with our partners. Coopérative Jeunesse Service Sud-Est, co-op for youth, for them to learn the model of entrepreneurship on the basis of cooperatives is still going on. And then Corporation 3+, we're implementing the protocol of agreement for 3 municipalities, the service agreement that was set up between our Economic Development Agency and the 3 municipalities. So basically it's a new regional dynamics that has been created in that sense. Continuing with construction projects whose building permits were given in 2018. So we see CF Champlain on Paul Street to basically host the corporate offices of TD. And then on the right, it's the expansion of BMW and Mini. That's part of the Lawnsbury Group on Ferdinand Boulevard. So the values of these building permits for some of the bigger projects, you see them here. There were a couple of other projects that we wanted you to note. For example, Luco Holdings on Industrial is the former municipal garage, if I'm not mistaken. They've received improvements to be able to take new people. The center in the new brasserie, karaoke, Flying Goats, that was established there. and other projects that were set up. One on Regis Street for Liquor New-Brunswick. I also wanted to mention the building permits, what it represents as far as the property taxes, municipally speaking. So here we see the present day 2017 completed, and then now January 7 to September at $50.3 million for the period ending end of September. So obviously we're probably going to reach 51 million if we're not there yet. We want to be a little bit conservative. And this is in added property taxes for 2018, $1,001,000. What we're discussing with entrepreneurs, we have predictions of 48 million for 2019. 2020 and 2021, we see figures that these things, but development projects often take 24 to 36 months before being finalized. This is a cycle that we're involved in many projects. The 48 million is a little bit optimistic, but we wanted to keep it in that range in order not to alarm people. I would probably think maybe 10 or 15 million less than that, but there are projects that could happen the following year. So projects that we could break the earth. So that's in those figures. Figures could also change. So we prefer to be a little more optimistic than rather go under, rather than be under. Yeah, on the optimistic side, we're trying to push things forward. The master plan for the industrial park concerning the future development phases, phase 2A was finished in 2017, so that part is accomplished, finished. We're looking now funding for phase 2B, represents the transportation for the construction of the development. The infrastructure on the land is already in place. And we've already submitted 2 years ago at Fonds Chantier Canada, see if it's going to be considered in order to finish the construction of the road, and then we'll be able to give the lands to our entrepreneurs. Phase 3, there was lands that were bought. We had a figure of $180,000. There was an opportunity to purchase these lands that we were looking for with larger parcels. That means that the portion that we needed cost us much less, and it's been acquired, so that the figure you see is $6,000. So we're going to go back to 2 slides for details for predictions of building permits this year, separation of non-residential property tax, 905,000, and then residential is 228,000. This slide represents the sectors in which work was done for development, especially non-residential, and then we also indicate the value of building permits that were given during the years 2014, 2018, 5 years basically, and then the right-hand column are the municipal property taxes, specifically for building permits that were given during that period. So if you take the value of building permits for property taxes, 94 million in the downtown area, represents property funds for 2018 for the city of 2.3 million. The other zones, 58 for 1.4, industrial park, in the industrial park for aviation, just Aviation Avenue, almost 41 million, or represents a property tax of 999,000. East of Boulevard Dieppe, the industrial park, so 62 million building permits, 1.5. West of Dieppe Boulevard, 123 million for 3 million. So 9.3 million property taxes that these projects has brought forth. That our investors, private investors, have decided to invest in Dieppe, brings forth 9.2 million, 9.3 million almost. Here I have investment opportunities, and I had made adjustments to these to make sure that there's a little bit more detail in the figures, but really the big picture is there. It doesn't change that much. What we're indicating here are opportunities for future investments that the municipality could do for planning and development of projects on lands that would belong to the city. 2 columns downtown on the left-hand side, so there's a business plan. We needed to finish it for next year. There was design for parking and the future lane in order to be able to finish the construction of the phase 2 on Gauvin. There's a purchase of CHNB and other acquisitions that are there, both of them together 780,000. The alignment specifically of the purchases would be different than what we have here, but these are the figures that I do have. So I'm sorry about that, but it's in the general idea, $800,000 approximately. There's also a purchase also for a land that would be added to this of approximately $95,000, but the city is already aware of this, and the funds have already been set aside for 2019 in that. And then in the planning, we'd have to look like at the interest or an RFP for Gauvin Street. We're looking for a consultant to help us with this, so funds would be set aside to possibly do that in the next year. Business and Technology Park. The business plan for Boulevard Dieppe. This line should disappear. It's finished. We've done it during this year. There's a development of Ruffin Street, all the plans, the professional wages and all that, and then construction of Ruffin Street, which is around 2.5 to 3 million. That should be released when it comes to the municipal council table. So these are the figures if we want to realize those dreams. So that brings us to the request of the budget as such. So this is the presentation of the request of budget in comparison to the figures of 2018. I'll start by the bottom. Request of the municipality for this year as approved with a detailed budget that was presented at the Finance Committee of the board, and that was recommended by the Board of Expansion Dieppe. We're talking about $1,077,227, which is for the request for operational from the city. You'll realize that the figures have changed. For example, in variable costs this year, because we have the innovation. Those expenses are there in the variable costs, so you'll see that there. So that is the biggest part between 144 and 45,000. It's 35,000 of that project. Concerning the other priority streams, their deductions, we adjusted some expenses because the land sales are not at the level that they were at last year. So we adjusted that figure downward. Our total budget is 1.6, almost 1.7 million. So Expansion Dieppe is going to be looking for $400,000 in other revenues, either by projects that are financed by the governments of the federal or provincial governments, the land sales or investments, banquet or innovation or something, or other things. So operations, our budget is balanced. The portion of the development projects, without going into details, these projects, we figure there's going to be a loss of approximately $200,000. The majority of the reasons for that is the debentures that we have to pay for the development for phase 1 on aviation, and the property taxes paid on lands that we hold for future development. So that is the biggest chunk of that amount. So even with the lands that we sell with development projects, we still figure that there'll be a deficit. You all know that we work very hard to bring our financial partners to the table to solve this problem. We'll have to attack it very closely. I had a video, but it's not part of this presentation. It's on my tablet, but I'm not sure if I can show you. But since my time is gone, I will spare you. We wanted to show you the vision of phase 2 of the downtown that was created for that. In order for you to understand the requests that we're putting in and the figures that we're suggesting you to look at to put aside to complete the project. So I would suggest you to send electronically the video to council. Yes, we can do that for that. So questions from members of council? No questions? So thank you for your presentation. Thank you especially to our dear volunteers from the board, Mr. Stever, Madame Irene, and the staff also, obviously, and members of Municipal Hall that are part of the Board of Administration. You know that the big challenge that is facing us over the next 2 years, we hope to be able to find the necessary solutions to be able to continue the development. It's unfortunate that provincial government doesn't seem to appreciate that the money that we send back to them in the fiscal system that exists now. We know that we've justified over the years the investments that have been made in Dieppe on behalf of the governments, but we have difficulty in finding the magic formula to convince them in order to be able to continue our development, specifically around the international airport, Roméo Leblanc, which presents a lot of opportunity, potential for the airport as well as for us here in Dieppe as well, concerning future development. And I'd like to say, I want Dieppe to become the Mississauga of Moncton. It has nothing to do with the fact that the mayor has been in position until she was 92 years old. It has much more to do with the bank account of Mississauga, which is the richest city in Canada, without any doubt. So thank you very much. So that puts an end to our meeting for tonight. And for members of council, Madame Le Boutillier, I don't know if you have anything to add. No? So good evening to all. For members of Municipal Council, we have a